Good morning, everybody. This is 12 Gauge. I'd like to start off with the disclaimer everything that is stated here is strictly my opinion. And I'm going to present a lot of facts and a lot of theories, but that's just all they are, just theories, because in reality, nobody really knows at this point other than the information that we have from the PCA. I'm going to be talking about a lot of different cases and intertwine them together as a theory that I've been thinking about. So let's talk about it. First of all, I was on a panel last night and they were discussing a situation that another creator had discussed as far as, like when you finish surfing, you get out, you jump into a rubber tub and you strip down. That got me to thinking that if the individual that did this came out of the house, stripped down, had a wetsuit on, and then threw everything in the trunk and took off, as they say, or what is stated in the PCA. This is an interesting theory because not only would he have everything covered up, the mesh on the bodysuit or the wetsuit would allow any DNA or skin cell to be dropped in the car. But I don't want to get into that aspect of it as much because I'm not a DNA specialist or anything of that nature. So I'm just strictly just brainstorming here. I've been watching two relative cases that were in the past. One of them was the Gainesville Ripper, and the other one that I watched yesterday was a little bit about Ted Bundy. Well, the similarities in this case that I noticed were obviously the knife attacks. They were done, on opportunities to be able to take out the victims. But one thing that I noticed on the Gainesville Ripper is he would put gray tape over their mouths. And then he would essay them and then roll them over and stab them. And then position them in provocative ways. None of that was stated in this case as far as essay. But the thing about nothing was heard. There was no screams that were heard or anything of that nature. All that was heard was crying. And I think she said in the PCA, dog barking and whimpering maybe. But can you imagine if there was gray tape that was placed over a person's mouth as the crime was unfolding, and then after it happened, take the gray tape off, stick it in your Dickies suit or whatever you're wearing, and then take off on to the next. And I'm not trying to be so nonchalant about the way I speak. I'm just I'm used to being very blunt and very to the point. So please don't take my method of speaking as being callous or uncaring. I'm just not having my emotional attachment to it right now, even though I do recognize that this is a very heinous and very disturbing case, to say the least. Now on to Ted Bundy. While I was watching his documentary on YouTube, one thing stuck out to me, when he was they called it a beach, but it was kind of like a lakefront where he picked up one of his victims. And they made a statement about he got into his Volkswagen Beetle and drove off. And someone took a picture of his Volkswagen Beetle, but the license plate was too blurred to really identify it. Well, they followed that up with saying it was the 70s, so there was hundreds of Volkswagen Beetles in that area where he was at. So it got me to thinking, okay, well, that's a similarity to the Idaho 4 in a sense that think about the 2200 Hyundai Elantras that are in that area all alone as they were speaking on this crime early on. Does it mean anything? No. But the similarities are very, very interesting to say the least. What are the odds of these similarities being same car, multiple variables of there being the same car in that area in both cases? I mean, I understand that, you could go to any city and you're going to see more than one variation of a vehicle. Kind of like here where I live, white Ford trucks are everywhere. So if a crime was committed and the perp was in a white Ford truck, it would be difficult to find them unless you really had other insinuating evidence to show that, this was the person. When the Ted Bundy case, they identified that his Volkswagen Beetle was a gold color or kind of like a off yellow, goldish color. So once they did the sketches, it was easy to identify that who could potentially be this individual. Well, that's interesting because I don't know, due to the technological aspect of being 2022, the reasoning for not releasing a sketch of the perp or potential perp, because nobody really knew what they were looking for as far as an individual until the PCA came out. Before then, all the police had asked was for assistance in looking for a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, and all they really had was the Exxon footage. But still no sketch of the potential perp, which I understand if you're reading the PCA, all you would have was an individual 5'10" or taller, dressed in black with bushy eyebrows. I mean, I could understand why there wasn't a sketch because there was no eyeballs described, no nose features, no mouth features, no facial features, whether he was, because you couldn't see anything other than this, So how are you going to do a sketch on just that? You really can, but I mean, it's not really going to tell anything. So I thought it was very interesting on these two cases because in the Gainesville Ripper case, he had opportunities and kind of stalked his victims and then used that opportunity, went in, did what he did, and then came out, positioned them. That was his calling card. And I was wondering, early on they said that Kaylee was found on top of Maddie, and I was wondering if this was a form of positioning or if they had any kind of abnormal positioning where she was found or if she just dropped and landed on Maddie. And of course the other two, Ethan and Xana, they really didn't say how they were found or where the positions were found or how they were positioned or anything of that sort. that I can recall. If they did, it wasn't so extravagant that you would think, oh, this is the perpetrator's calling card. Um, and one thing in the Gainesville Ripper case, after he finished what he did, once he killed the individuals and essayed them, he would clean up. He would even clean up the bodies, before he positioned them. So I wonder if at any point this perpetrator did the same to the bodies. Because, in the PCA it states, when they walked into the first bedroom, they didn't use adjectives such as bloody or gaping, gashing, anything about the victims, and even when they walked upstairs, and I don't know if they would use that language in the PCA or if it's just too much, but you would think that when they were doing their investigation, they would, they would use that kind of lingo to describe the crime scene, other than what the coroner described as being a horrific crime scene, bloody, horrific. The only person that I can recall that gave any kind of insight as to what kind of view you would see from the downstairs bedroom or the second floor bedroom was when Mr. Gonsalves stated there was a hell of a battle that went on down there. So that would reflect that there was a lot of damage either on the furniture, there was damage on the bed, there was damage on the door. Maybe the door was unable to be opened because it had been damaged to the point that when it was shut, it wasn't correctly aligned so you could walk in and walk out. Maybe that's why, information that has been leaked has stated, well, the doorway was unable to be opened. That's why other people were called to come assist in opening this doorway. Like I said earlier, I've been following this case for about a year. I've been reading, all kinds of things, all kinds of articles, Reddit posts, 4chan posts, any information that could put some kind of semblance of reality to this case. And at this point, I've just kind of backed off from all that because I don't want to be one of those people that gives information that somebody else has already dug up or somebody else has speculated on or any of that nature. I mean, because we all know what the PCA states, and pretty much that's all the information that we really have. We have the Linda Lane footage. We have the other camera down Linda Lane, and we have a screenshot of the 1112 house. And that's it. That's pretty much it. But one thing I do remember early on, and when they were looking for camera footage on Queen Road, there's some apartments that are parallel to the 1122 house. And they keep speaking about a Ring camera. Well, I remember they were talking about this apartment that had a Ring camera that was parallel to the 1122 house. I have searched and searched and searched for that video, for that information. I can't find it. And I don't even recall if it was a news station that supplied this information, but I remember them giving a diagram of the parallel view of that Ring camera and what it would capture. So if that is true, that ring camera would have caught the Elantra heading up, around, and back down. It wouldn't have caught the one of him going around the Linda Lane apartment, but it would have caught him coming back down Queen Road. And it would be on the right side of the road, fairly close to that bush where they stated that there was individuals that started yelling at Kaylee once she got home from the ride share. Another unfounded theory. Um, you know, I remember this well, and I wonder if that's the ring camera that Kaylee's sister used to look at to see exactly what time the rideshare driver dropped off her sister and Maddie. And maybe she saw the color of the vehicle, maybe she saw the individual. I mean, I don't know. I don't really. Ring cameras can be very grainy or they can be very clear. But at nighttime, you have all the deflecting lights, you have all those scenarios. You would probably pick up people talking, people yelling, that 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 stuff going on. But the light bulb camera that is on 1112, I believe, I have never heard one of those light bulb cameras be referred as a ring camera. Usually the ring camera is something that's placed right outside your door that looks like a doorbell, you know. It's very simplistic, one button. You can call, you can talk on your phone to whoever you see on the camera, this, that, and the other. So that's always stuck with me, and it's never really fared well. But people stopped talking about it, so I figured, they know more than I do, so I'm not going to bring a big deal of it. Another thing is the Elantra making all those passes around the Queen Road apartments. I was wondering, because of opportunity, if the perpetrator, I'm going to call him the perpetrator because whether I believe it's Brian or whether I believe it's not Brian, that's not here nor there. That's my opinion. And, it doesn't matter what I believe. I'm just giving the facts as I recall them and as I know about these things, Anyways, back to what I was saying is, as he was making his drives around Queen Road apartments, the opportunity, because that is one of the most basic things that law enforcement talks about as far as identifying somebody who's looking to commit a crime, is the opportunity. And what is the opportunity? Could he have been focused on another area other than the 1122 house? Could he have been looking at another target, potentially at the Queen Road apartments? Could he have been seeing what kind of layout, what kind of people were around, what would be the easiest way in and out? Because he supposedly stalked this house 12 times. 12 times. So he would have had the layout fairly easily, you would believe. And he'd understand the route in, the route out, potential targets of interruption, individuals that would potentially be a problem, which houses were partying later on in the night usually, what the patterns were of that street, what the patterns were of the houses around it, the apartments, and so on and so on. As you saw in most of the videos, especially the Banfield video, all those videos around there was a lot of activity going on. Even though it was stated it was a quiet night, there was a lot of activity going on. Therefore, for him to come and go do those passes around Queen Road Apartments? Could it have been his car was malfunctioning? Could it have been his car was not really running correctly? You know, it could be anything. But let's get to the pings. I work placing GPS monitors on juveniles. And I'm not trying to say GPS is the same as the pings on a cell phone tower. I'm not an expert. I'm not even going into that avenue so deeply. But I do want to say this. With the GPS monitors, and we have done um, experiments with these at my office. With the GPS monitors, once you place them on an individual, they are tracked by satellites that ping the GPS monitor. And you would believe that if you were in a house, it would be pinging directly where you're at. But we found out that that's not always true. We've even suspected some juveniles of not being in the house when they were supposed to be in. So here's an example. I had a juvenile in my office doing some kind of work on the computer. We went and looked up his GPS pings, and they showed him as far as 50 feet from my office, which he was not 50 feet from my office. He was in my office the whole time. And you say, well, that could have been him walking up. That could have been this and that. Well, that's true. But there would have been more pings. There was more pings around that area after he was in my office. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, he was in my office. We looked at the pings on the map. There was pings all around where he wouldn't have been due to the fact that he was in my office. So I'm wondering if these pings were as specific as that on a cell phone. Like, you could be at a gas station getting gas, and the satellite or whatever pings off the cell tower shows you 50 feet away, a mile away, whatever it might be. I'm sure they're more accurate than what I'm displaying, and I'm not trying to create any conspiracy here. But in reality, technology is fallible. It is fallible. And, you know, if you have Life 360 on your phone, you know what I'm talking about. And obviously this is more in depth than these things that I'm mentioning, but if you have that Life 360 on your phone and you're tracking your child or whatever, there's been times when I've been here and it showed the individual who I have on my phone for 360, them being here when I know darn well they're at home or they're at school. Or it shows them being at a location when I know that they're here. So that's all I want to say is those things are they're reliable. I would suspect more reliable in the aspect that, you know, you can go into all those pings and really find out which ones were closest to the house at the times of potentially stalking the individuals. The stalking would be the motive, the opportunity, and him driving around, it was his alibi. But how many more people's phones pinged around that residence at those times? And were these people interviewed? How many times were they at that residence? Were they there to party? Were they there as a visitor? Were they there just walking by the residence? Think about the Queen Road apartments. How many people walk down that little path between all those apartments and those houses that lead to the band field to get to the campus? How many people ride bicycles down that road that possibly their phones are pinging? These things, there's a lot of movement around there. I can say one thing: if they really got the correct perpetrator, kudos to their police work, for reals, because there was so many things going on in that area in 2 days or a week. The football game, the family weekend, all those things. And had I been looking at this as an investigator, it would have been like trying to find a needle in a haystack, and they found that needle. So kudos to them if he is the perpetrator. Based on my knowledge, which is like everybody else's probably, there's a 50-50 chance that he could be the one. Heck, 50-50, 51%. Because when you take your emotional attachment out of it and you take it out of, you stop being tunnel visioned and you stop believing just what other people say or what they've dug up or what they show. You make up your own mind in the end whether this person is the perp or whether he's not. And chances are we won't know until the trial. Honestly, like the OJ trial, I'm old enough to really remember that, and even watching some of it, they had painted, the media had painted a picture that OJ was guilty. They found blood under his Bronco doorknob. They found all kinds of evidence with OJ's blood, the victim's blood. And I was pretty certain, I was at a young age, so I was pretty certain, hey, they got him. Freaking OJ, they got OJ. And then when they acquitted him and, the glove didn't fit and this and that and the other, I was shocked. Because I thought, how could they have all this evidence and he walks? Because it isn't what we think we know or what we see that adds up in a case. It's what you can prove. It's what you can prove. This plus this equals this without a reasonable doubt. Because if it's a reasonable doubt, then it's circumstantial. If somebody said this and this and this, then it's hearsay unless you prove what they say. And that's why I'm trying so hard to stay away from, because this is my theory. It's not yours. I'm not giving information or even examples for you to run and say, well, this channel said this and this channel said that, and that does make sense. Well, just because it makes sense does not mean that I solved the case. All it means is I gave a new angle to a year-long and then some months of a case where everybody's talking about it. I hope you enjoyed some of the things that I talked about, and I know as time goes on, I'll be more factual. I'll give you dates and times and of this nature. But honestly, I don't have the time to put in that effort due to being a full-time student, having a full-time job. I just got a call just now, being on call about a juvenile. So, my life is pretty structured and pretty full. So this is a mode of entertainment to the extent that I'm able to talk about this without having to have a lot of people debunk my theories or, this, that, and the other, because you know what? You have your opinion and I respect that. If you have any comments, please leave them at the bottom. Like my page if you think that this is somewhere where you can come where we can just talk about certain cases and certain situations where we can just discuss in an educated way rather than basing our reality on what if this and what if that. Because what if this and what if that, it's just what I said, a theory, unless you can prove this plus this equals this without a reasonable doubt. Because as long as there's that reasonable doubt, then it's just circumstantial. This just happened to be this way. And I'm sure there's a smart person out there that has figured this case out. I'm sure there's a lot of them. But one thing I want to talk about before I sign off here is this. You know, another area that I've heard people focus on is his education. Well, he was this type of student and he was that type of student and he was going for his PhD and he put that questionnaire on Reddit and this and that and the other, and he was so smart. Why did he make so many mistakes? It couldn't have been him. Well, have you ever thought the difference between a criminal and just a normal citizen? Have you ever thought about that? The most basic analogy I can give you is this. A normal citizen walks by and sees a wallet on the ground. They don't think about, is there money in there? Is there credit cards? Am I being set up? No. They pick up the wallet, they look in it, see if there's a driver's license, any identifying information, that they can get this wallet back to the person. They might even take it to the service desk or wherever they found it and turn it in, hoping that, whoever lost it, or a cell phone or whatever, whoever lost it, get their property back, because they understand the consequence of losing a wallet, losing your identification, losing your credit cards. They understand that. And they want to do what they have believed most of their lives is the right thing by turning this in. Now let's talk about the other individual, the criminal-minded individual. This individual finds a wallet. They pick it up, they look around, they see if there's money in it. If there's money in it, they grab the money, put the wallet in another pocket, and take off. They go to a place where they can examine the wallet, and then they start taking what they can, or just throwing it away, or just throwing the wallet down and the information in different places so it's not traced back to them. They wipe down the wallet. They might even think it was a setup, and they start having regret if later on they hear about this being a sting or something of that nature. And it's an impulsive movement without the fear of consequence. Does that make sense? They don't think about the consequence first. They think about the reward, the payoff, the instantaneous gratification of all of a sudden finding money and what they're going to do with it and how blessed they are by getting this in their path. And God must have answered my prayer, because look, I have money now to pay my bills, or I have money to go buy drugs, or I have money to do whatever, gasoline. It isn't until they're booked and charged with this, that they forget to remember that there was cameras around where they found the wallet. They're on camera. They've been identified. And then they still, even being given the presentation of, we have you on camera, it's still a denial. It's still a game of manipulation. Catch me if you can. How am I going to get out of this? What can I give them that'll get them off my back so that I can get out of here? So with that analogy, think about what you're saying whenever you say he's a criminology student. He has all these good things going for him. Why would he be so sloppy? The best precursor of future experience is past situation. Maybe I said that wrong. The best precursor of future situations is past experience. So let's look at Mr. Koberger. His own father turned him in for stealing his sister's cell phone and pawning it and getting money for it. So what else has he done that has put a draining on this family? What trust has he broken? What else has he done that has not been spoken about? Maybe Mr. Koberger was a thief. After all, in the act of committing these 4 murders, he was charged with burglary. Maybe he has a history of stalking other people. Maybe he has a history of being mean to animals. Maybe he has other things that could lead up to a pattern of a profile of an individual that could possibly have done this. This is a death penalty case. This is not a shoplifting case. This is not something that, oh, if we get it wrong, we got the wrong guy. Nobody wants to send the wrong guy to their death, no matter what individuals might think. As human beings, we are pretty passive when it comes to the death penalty a lot of times, but we have to do what we have to do when that law has been broken. So think about the patterns, the profile, the things that they gathered out of his apartment that have not been given to the public because of the gag order. Think about the technology. What was on his phone? What was he searching for? What did he buy? Was it just normal for him to be that methodical, if in case that's what his personality trait came up to be? Did he have any close friends other than the ones that were interviewed by the media? Did he have any people that were scared of him? I'm sure his family has a lot of information on Mr. Koberger that has not been released, but has been released to the police or the FBI. And of course, just because somebody meets a profile or a pattern does not mean that they're guilty of a quadruple murder. But when you open your mind up to that possibility, then it becomes reality, not what if, what if, what if, because there's no evidence there. The evidence that you're presenting is your speculation or theory. I'm not speculating. I'm giving questions that could be asked that already have answers to, that nobody knows. And I'm not narcissistic enough to think that I could solve the crime. These questions have just come in my head, and I thought I'd share them with you if you've had the same type of questions. Because it was a short period of time that this crime was committed. Physical stature, he could have met that criteria. Strength, he could have met that criteria. Element of surprise, he could have met that criteria. Did he present himself with a weapon other than a knife? If he did, then there's that aspect. Did he put tape over their mouths if he had to? Did he bind them and then release them once he killed them? There was a murder here where they had video. They caught the people. They released a lot of information. And people are still speculating. People are still wanting more juice. So there's never going to be enough information. Even after the trial, they're going to give you the play-by-play. They're going to cut and redact a lot of the gruesome details. But it's not going to be enough for you, because then in your mind, you're going to be saying, well, what if this? What if that? What if this? What did they mean by that? What did it? Okay, well, if you have that kind of mindset, it's not an analytical mindset. It's an inquisitive mindset, meaning that no matter what you're given, you always want more because it gives you a feeling of a high. And it's almost like a drug. You can't get enough of it. And it becomes to make you crazy and craving when you don't get it. So that's why some of these creators have multiple followers, because on a daily basis, they're feeding a need. They're feeding a need. Their subs are getting high off their creation. Why do you think romance novels sell so greatly? Why do you think true crime novels sell so greatly? Because it taps into that mindset. It taps into that part of the mind that gives you excitement. So if you live a life that's not exciting, or if it's mundane or anything of that nature, that feeling of exhilaration for the first time, it leads you to craving more. Think about the Vicky White case. She was that correctional officer that worked in Alabama for 20 years. No disciplinaries, good worker, did her job, exceptional individual as she was stated by her peers. Her life was riddled in trauma outside of her work. Her work was her escape until it became the problem. And the criminal-minded individual spotted that. Sometimes they say a criminal can spot weakness or opportunity. There's that word, opportunity. So this individual started grooming Miss White, or vice versa, and she became infatuated with another life other than a life she was living, supposedly. Based on the facts, she sold her home, she filed for retirement, and she started orchestrating this crime of living with the love of her life happily ever after in another country. As simplistic as that sounds, think about, for someone who's looking at this rationally, because there's a lot of inappropriate relationship with offenders that go on in this world. Think about the school teachers that have inappropriate relationship with their students. There's a lot of that goes on, and people ask why. Why? because it fulfills a need that this person is unwilling to fill themselves. I always talk about missing pieces, and I will get into that on another stream. But let's get back to the Vicky White case. Well, she helped the individual, his last name was White also, no relation, to get out of jail. They bought vehicles on Vicky's dime and, using disguises and all this and everything else. They went and hid out, ended up in Evansville, Indiana. An individual who owned a car wash, he saw Mr. White at the car wash, and he instantly knew this 6'8" individual was the escaped prisoner. So he called it in. They came and checked it out, and ultimately they were tracked to this motel. They were surveyed. The two individuals came out of the hotel. Law enforcement followed them. They got into a chase. Law enforcement rammed the car. The car fell into a ditch. Mr. White was apprehended. But before this, Vicky placed a 911 call where you could hear up to the end still saying, "Come on, we could get out and run. We could get away." While there's police surrounding them. Come on, we should have just stayed at the hotel. Holding on to that feeling, a euphoria of being happily ever after, totally not even paying attention to the reality of there being law enforcement after them, surrounding them, and about to apprehend them. But once the reality hit for her and she saw Mr. White being apprehended, she ultimately took her own life. Because the reality hit her so strongly, I bet, of what she had done, who she had shamed, and unwilling to face the consequence of that ridicule, the question, the trial, the sentencing, all of it. So she took herself out. So that, my friends, I want to leave with you in theory. Why would an individual who is a PhD student wrapped up with tons of potential ahead leave himself open to the temptation of what he follows, of that imaginary line that supposedly he crossed, where he was unable to bring himself back that one time, and acted out on it to the point of no return. Honestly, there didn't even need to be a fuse, I'm sure, because based on all that we know so far, based on the leaked theories and hypotheses that have been proven, there didn't need to be a catalyst that put all this into motion, other than he had reached the point of no return. Impulsive, criminal addictive excitement. And maybe he had a life of what if, until he finally found his answer on that fateful night. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed what I have presented. And if so, please like, subscribe, and look past the face, look past the gear that I'm wearing, and listen for the information, because if you listen to certain things that are said and stated, you have a potential to learn from anybody. And I learned a lot last night on a panel that I was on. I got to get permission from the individual before I release his channel. But I can tell you that there's some good people in there. When you stick to the facts, criminals, narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, be out with them every time, because there's no gray area. You have the facts, and they can't squirm their way out of it. And that's with anybody. Y'all have a very awesome Saturday. And I guess since everybody has a signature sound or whatever, click, click, boom. There's my 12 gauge. Goodbye for now, my friends.